The cosmic joke 50 years had passed since Earth joined the greater space community. But humans weren't treated as equals, not even close. The aliens from all over the galaxy saw Earth people as funny little creatures, like pets or circus animals. That learned a few tricks. These aliens had ships that could fold space. They had cities floating in the clouds of gas giants. They had solved hunger, disease, and even death itself. And there stood humanity, barely able to reach their own moon. Before being discovered, Commander Lin became Earth's newest ambassador to the Galactic Council. She wasn't prepared for how the aliens would treat her. At her first big space meeting, a tall blue creature with 4 arms patted her on the head. "Look how they dress. Like children playing with fabric," laughed the alien to its friends. They didn't even try to hide their talk, knowing humans couldn't understand their higher languages without translator devices. Lin smiled politely, though inside she wanted to punch the smug alien in the face. But that would only prove what they all thought, that humans were wild animals with no self-control. "Would you like to see our newest starlifter?" asked a jellied blob floating in a gravity bubble. "It's very simple technology. Perhaps in another 1,000 years your kind might build one too." The room filled with clicking, hissing and rumbling sounds, all alien ways of laughing. Lin walked around the grand meeting hall on the massive space station. Every corner showed off how far ahead these aliens were. Holograms displayed star systems that humans had never even seen. Visitors from 100 worlds chatted and planned the future of the galaxy. No one asked Earth's opinion on anything that mattered. "Try this," said a thin, grey creature, handing Lin a small cube of food. "It's made for your digestive system. We studied your biology closely." Lin took a bite. It tasted like cardboard mixed with too much sugar. "Delicious," she lied. "You see?" the grey being announced to nearby aliens. "They can be polite when trained properly." More alien laughter followed. Later that night, Lin stared out her window at the stars. Earth looked so small from here, a tiny blue dot among millions. How could humanity ever be taken seriously? The aliens' ships could destroy Earth in seconds. Their knowledge spanned millions of years. Their robots were smarter than the best human minds, but Lin noticed something as she watched the aliens all day. These mighty space people had forgotten something important. They hadn't faced a real challenge in thousands of years. Everything came easy to them. They didn't know struggle or pain or the need to survive against all odds. Humans knew these things. "Very well. Laugh now," Lin whispered to herself as she looked at the grand alien ships docked outside. "You think we're weak because we're young, but we climb mountains because they're there. We explore because we're curious. We fight because we're stubborn. And we never, ever give up." She didn't know it yet, but the galaxy would soon need that. Human spirit more than anyone could imagine. The patronizing Peace Earth's place in the galaxy was like being invited to sit at the grown-up table, but given a plastic cup, while everyone else drank from crystal. 10 years had passed since Commander Lin's first awkward meeting with the Galactic Council, and little had changed. "We bring gifts," announced the ambassador from the Zephyrian Empire, his translucent tentacles waving with what humans had learned. Was their version of fake politeness. "Shuttlecraft with internal gravity systems, very useful for your kind." What the ambassador didn't mention was that these shuttles were considered antiques by galactic standards, models that had been out of production for at least 3 centuries. Still, Earth's representatives clapped and gave thanks as expected. "General," Patel watched from the back of the room, keeping his face carefully blank. As head of Earth's defense forces, he'd seen this game played out dozens of times. The aliens would throw humanity their technological scraps, then pat themselves on whatever passed for backs among their species. "When will Earth be permitted to join the Military Advisory Committee?" asked the human delegate, a question raised. "At every meeting for the past 15 years. The room filled with the clicks, whistles and rumbling sounds that humans now recognized as condescending laughter. "Your species still fights among itself," replied the Mokhtar delegate, her crystalline body shimmering under the lights. "You think in terms of violence first. How can we trust such primitive instincts with weapons that could destroy solar systems?" What she didn't know was that in underground facilities across Earth, human scientists had been taking apart every piece of gifted technology, learning how it worked, rebuilding it, improving it when they could. The aliens thought humans were simple. They'd never bothered to notice our creativity. Perhaps next century, added another counselor kindly, as if speaking to a child. Later that evening, General Patel met with the top scientists at Lunar Base, hidden on the far side of the moon. Dr. Lee showed him their latest breakthrough. "We've reverse-engineered their communication systems," she explained, bringing up a holographic display that looked almost as good as the aliens' tech. "We can now listen to 70% of their secure transmissions," the general nodded. "And the adaptation on the shield technology?" Dr. Lee smiled. "We've miniaturized it to fit our smaller ships. It's not as powerful as theirs, but it uses less energy. Something they never bothered to try because they have unlimited power sources. This was humanity's secret advantage. The aliens had forgotten what it meant to make do with less. Humans had always known how to adapt, improvise, and overcome limitations. Training facilities on Mars. Soldiers learned to pilot ships using neural interfaces humans had developed themselves, different from alien technology, but just as effective. They practiced with weapons that looked primitive, but contained clever innovations the aliens would never expect. "They think we're just copying them," said a young pilot as she climbed out of the simulator. "They have no idea we're building something new." Every day, humanity played along with the charade. They accepted outdated star charts that showed only safe regions of space. They pretended to be grateful for access to basic scientific knowledge. They smiled and nodded when lectured about their violent tendencies. And every night, they prepared for the day when the galaxy would discover that humans weren't just funny little primitives playing at being a spacefaring civilization. "They've forgotten what it means to fight for survival," General Patel said softly, looking at Earth through the observation window. "But we remember, and someday that might make all the difference." The whispers of war-strange ships appeared at the edges of known space. Black, spiky vessels that moved like sharks circling prey. The Galactic Council barely noticed at first. When they did, they weren't worried. "Another wandering species," said the High Counselor, his 7 eyes blinking lazily. "They always come eventually, drawn to our prosperity." Commander Lin wasn't convinced. Now serving her 5th year as Earth's military attaché to the Council, she had learned to trust her gut. And right now, her gut was screaming danger. "Those aren't trader ships," she told her small team of human analysts. "Look at the formation. Look at how they move in and out of sensor range. They're testing defenses." The Council had given Earth access to a tiny fraction of their sensor network. Outdated equipment they no longer wanted, but humans had modified these cast-offs, pushing them beyond their original capabilities. That night, Lin's team picked up scattered transmissions from the unknown vessels. "Play it again," Lin ordered, leaning forward in her chair. The sounds were like nothing they'd heard before, screeching metallic noises that hurt human ears. But buried within were patterns, repeating sequences, military coordinates. Lin requested an emergency meeting with the Council the next morning. The massive chamber was nearly empty. Most members couldn't be bothered to attend a session called by a human. "These ships, we're calling them Nexoids based on their movement patterns. They're not here to join the Council," Lin explained, projecting the intercepted transmissions. "They're sharing tactical information, mapping your defense networks. This is an invasion force." The few aliens present exchanged their version of amused glances. "Commander," said Diplomat Creel, his gas-filled body pulsing with condescending colors, "the Council has encountered thousands of new species. None have ever posed a threat. Our technology is too advanced. Our defenses impenetrable." "But," Lin tried again. "Perhaps humans see threats everywhere because you evolved as prey animals," interrupted another counselor, triggering bubbling sounds that translated as laughter, always jumping at shadows. Lin clenched her fists under the table. Humans had been dismissed like this for decades. No matter how much evidence she presented, they wouldn't listen. That evening, she sent encrypted messages back to Earth with everything they'd gathered. General Patel responded immediately. "Continue monitoring. Prepare evacuation plans for human embassy if needed. We're accelerating our preparations here." For the next 2 weeks, Lin watched the Nexoid ships grow bolder. They ventured deeper into Council space. When one approached an outlying mining colony, the Council finally sent a greeting ship. It never returned. Technical difficulties, the Council announced. No cause for alarm. 3 more greeting ships disappeared. Still, the Council refused to acknowledge the danger. Their civilization had known peace for so long they couldn't recognize war when it stared them in the face. They think they're gods, Lynn told her team as they worked through another night tracking Nexoid movements. They've forgotten they can bleed. A junior analyst burst into the room. Commander, we've decoded more of their transmissions. They're not just mapping defenses, they're identifying targets, population centers, power stations, the Council headquarters itself. Lynn looked at the star map where the Nexoid vessels now formed an unmistakable attack formation. The Council worlds glittered like jewels, beautiful and vulnerable. Send everything to Earth, she ordered, and start packing. When this war begins, we don't want to be anywhere near the Galactic Council. As she stared at the advancing enemy. Fleet! Lynn felt a strange mix of fear and vindication. Humanity had been preparing for a fight since they reached the stars. The mighty Council had been preparing for nothing but more peace and prosperity. Sometimes being the galaxy's laughingstock meant you were the only ones who remembered how dangerous the universe could be. The fall of Titans, the attack came during what the Council called the Festival of Harmony, the greatest celebration in the galaxy, a time when most defense systems were running on automatic while their operators enjoyed the festivities. Perfect timing, not luck, strategy. The first Nexoid strike hit the Zenith Station, the pride of Council space. 10,000 ships appeared from nowhere, their black hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They fired strange weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. Impossible, screamed Councillor Vrax as the station's shields, designed to withstand supernovas, collapsed in seconds. Our defenses are perfect. Commander Lynn and her team watched in horror from their small observation post. The humans had evacuated most of their people days earlier, against Council orders. Now they witnessed what happened when a civilization forgot how to fight. The mighty Council fleet looked impressive as it rushed to defend their worlds. Gleaming ships larger than cities, weapons that could reshape planets. But the pilots had never faced a real enemy. The admirals had only ever conducted simulations. For 3,000 years they'd known nothing but mock battles and parades. They're bunching up, whispered Lynn's tactical officer. Basic mistake. They don't understand spacing. The Nexoid ships cut through the Council formation like wolves, through sheep. While Council captains tried to establish communication protocols, the invaders simply fired. While Council admirals debated optimal response patterns, their ships exploded around them. Within 6 hours, half the Council defense fleet was destroyed or disabled. By the next day, 3 major Council worlds were under siege. Lynn managed to establish contact with General Patel back on Earth. His face on the screen looked grim. How bad is it? He asked. Worse than we imagined, Lynn replied as her station shook from a distant explosion. The Council doesn't know how to fight a real war. Their technology is amazing, but they use it like children playing with toys. The main view screen, they watched the grand capital of the Mokhthar Empire, a world that had known peace for 5 millennia, burn under Nexoid bombardment. The crystalline beings who had always looked down on humans were shattering by the millions. Their tactics are terrible, added Lynn's second-in-command. They're trying to form perfect geometric patterns with their ships, because that's what their ancient textbooks say to do. The Nexoids just target the center points and watch the formations fall apart. The Council emergency channel suddenly activated. For the first time in known history, the voice on the other end sounded afraid. All civilized worlds, came the panicked broadcast. The Council requests immediate assistance. Our primary defense systems have been compromised. This is not a drill. General Patel looked at Lynn. You need to get out now. The station you're on is directly in the invasion path. Already moving, Lynn confirmed as her team finished loading. The last of their equipment. But there's something else you should know. We've been monitoring the Nexoid communications. They're not interested in conquering or ruling. They're wiping worlds clean. Total extinction. The General's expression hardened. How long before they reach Earth? Lynn checked the projection map her team had created. At current speeds, maybe 3 weeks, but that assumes they follow their current pattern. Then we have work to do, Patel said. Get your people home safely, Commander. As Lynn's ship pulled, Away from the observation post, she watched through the viewport as another council world went dark. The Nexoids were methodical, thorough, and completely ruthless. The council had believed their technology made them gods. Now they discovered that gods could die too. The greatest civilizations in known space were falling like dominoes. Beings who had mocked humans as primitive were screaming for help as their perfect worlds burned. And somewhere in that chaos, a small blue planet was preparing for a fight, a planet full of beings who had never forgotten how terrible and necessary war could sometimes be. The human response, the emergency signal reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. Within an hour, every military base on the planet and throughout the solar system went to full alert. Unlike the Galactic Council, humans had been preparing for this day. General Patel stood in the massive underground chamber beneath the Himalayas, that few outside the military knew existed. Around him, hundreds of officers and technicians worked with quiet efficiency. No panic, no confusion, just determined focus. "Bring up the hologram," he ordered. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, showing the Nexoid advance in red. Nearly a third of Council space had already fallen. The aliens who had looked down on humanity for decades were being slaughtered by the millions. "How long until the last Council defense line falls?" asked the general. "At current rates, 11 days, replied his intelligence chief. "Then another 16 to reach our solar system," Patel nodded. "Then it's time." He pressed his palm against a scanner, spoke a series of code words, and the far wall of the chamber slid open. The gathered officers gasped. Beyond the wall stretched an enormous hangar that shouldn't have been possible to build in secret. Inside floated ships, not the handful of outdated vessels the Council knew about. Hundreds of warships, some small and sleek, others massive and bristling with weapons. All built with a mix of reverse-engineered alien tech and pure human ingenuity. "Project Phoenix," Patel announced. 50 years in the making. On the other side of the chamber, another wall opened to reveal rows of mech suits, tanks, and weapons that looked both familiar and alien at the same time. "The Council gave us scraps thinking we'd just copy their designs," Patel explained to the younger officers who hadn't been briefed on the full program. "They never understood that humans don't just copy. We adapt, we improve, and sometimes we completely reimagine. Through secure channels, similar revelations were happening at bases around Earth and throughout the solar system. Humanity had built its own defense force in secret, knowing someday they might need to fight without help. Our biggest advantage," continued Patel as he walked among the ships, "is that we've never forgotten how to fight dirty. The Council races had designed their weapons and tactics around perfect mathematical models. Everything by the book, everything neat and orderly. Their ships moved in patterns so precise you could set a watch by them. Humans had studied war for their entire history. They knew battle was chaos. They knew victory often went not to the strongest but to the most unpredictable. In training centers across Earth, soldiers had been practicing for years with simulators based on every fighting style humans had ever developed. Guerrilla tactics, blitzkrieg, naval warfare adapted for space, ancient samurai strategies updated for three-dimensional combat. "The Nexoids have never faced anyone who fights like us," said the combat instructor to her pilots. "And we've been watching how they fight for weeks now." In orbit above Earth, the first ships prepared to depart, not toward safety, but toward the front lines. Commander Lin, barely recovered from her escape from Council space, stood on the bridge of Earth's new flagship, the Defiance. "We're really doing this?" asked her second-in-command. "Taking on an enemy that crushed civilizations thousands of years more advanced than us?" Lin smiled grimly. "Those advanced civilizations forgot what it means to struggle. They designed perfect weapons but forgot that war isn't perfect. They built beautiful ships but forgot to build warriors to crew them. Across the solar system, humanity's hidden fleet emerged from secret bases on Mars, Europa, and Titan, ships that shouldn't have been possible with Earth's primitive technology. Weapons the Council would have never permitted. "Send the message. To all ships," ordered General Patel from his command center. "Operation Thermopylae is now active. We are not running, we are not hiding." His eyes hardened as he watched the fleet move into formation. "We are hunting. The unexpected defenders. The Nexoid fleet detected the approaching human ships and barely considered them worth noting. Their battle computers classified Earth vessels as minimal threats, small, lightly armed, and few in number compared to the mighty Council armadas they had already crushed. Primitive designs, noted the Nexoid. Commander, its voice a harsh electronic buzz. No challenge. How wrong they were. The first sign that something was different came when 3 small Earth ships deliberately flew into an asteroid field. The Nexoids followed, expecting easy kills. Their sensors showed the human vessels breaking apart under asteroid impacts, but the destroyed ships were actually breaking into smaller attack craft, each piloted by a single human. These tiny fighters zipped between the asteroids at speeds that seemed suicidal, approaching the much larger Nexoid vessels from blind spots their designers had never considered vulnerable. Impossible maneuvers, reported a confused Nexoid officer. As the first of their scout ships exploded, the humans were flying in ways that defied the logical patterns the Nexoids had programmed into their battle systems. Where Council ships had moved in perfect, predictable formations, humans zigzagged, spun, and sometimes appeared to flee only to double back when least expected. Lieutenant Khatri led one such attack squad. Her fighter accelerated directly toward a Nexoid cruiser, weapons silent, looking exactly like a damaged ship out of control. "Steady," she told her squad over the comm. "They think we're dead in space. Keep playing dead." The Nexoid vessel didn't fire, its computers calculating that the approaching human ship posed no threat and would simply crash harmlessly against its shields. By the time the Nexoids realized the human ship was very much alive and carrying a new type of shield-piercing torpedo, it was too late. Khatri pulled up at the last possible second, her ship skimming the enemy vessel as her torpedoes burrowed through the previously impenetrable Nexoid shields. "Never let the enemy know what you're capable of until it's too late," she whispered, repeating the ancient military wisdom her grandfather had taught her. The Nexoid cruiser erupted into a ball of fire. Elsewhere, the Earth flagship Defiance engaged in an even stranger battle tactic. It broadcast on all frequencies, not messages of peace as the Council would have done, but sounds designed to disrupt and confuse, blaring noise across frequencies the Nexoids used for ship-to-ship communication. Old Earth war songs that made no logical sense to the enemy, and strangest of all, laughter. "They hate that," Commander Lin explained to her bridge crew. "Their psychology profile suggests they can't stand being mocked. The Nexoids had encountered many species, but none who would laugh in the face of death. None who would use humor as a weapon. When a human ship was damaged, it didn't retreat to safety as Council vessels did. Instead, it sometimes flew directly at the enemy in a final act of defiance. The Nexoids couldn't comprehend this behavior. Sacrificing oneself was illogical in their perfect battle calculations. "They don't understand us," said General Patel, watching the battle from his command center. "To them, every decision is about efficiency and survival. They've never faced beings who would die for an idea." The greatest shock to the Nexoids came when they finally captured a human vessel. Their boarding parties expected to find cowering creatures begging for mercy, like the Council species had done. Instead, they found the corridors booby-trapped, each room a potential ambush, and humans who fought hand-to-hand with a ferocity that stunned the invaders. "Ship lost," came the final transmission from the Nexoid boarding party. "Enemy continues. Fighting after fatal wounds. Enemy laughs while dying. Cannot compute." In space, the human fleet used tactics drawn from Earth's bloodiest wars, but adapted for 3 dimensions. Pincer movements from naval battles, Air Force strategies for gaining the high ground, even ancient cavalry flanking maneuvers reimagined for spacecraft. "We're not fighting the way they expect," Lin told her crew as they prepared to engage another Nexoid battle group. "We're fighting like humans." For the first time since beginning their conquest, the Nexoid advance slowed. Their perfect battle computers struggled to predict what these unpredictable creatures would do next. Their commanders experienced something new. Doubt. The species that had been the galaxy's joke was suddenly the only one the Nexoids couldn't easily defeat. The Laughingstock had become the last best hope for survival. The turning tide word spread through the broken remains of the once mighty Galactic Council. Humans, those primitive, emotional creatures that everyone had laughed at, were somehow holding their own against the Nexoid terror. Not just holding their own, winning battles. The first alien diplomats arrived at Earth's hastily established forward base on what remained of New Arcturus, a former luxury resort world now half destroyed by Nexoid bombardment. They came quietly, their grand ships hidden to avoid Nexoid detection. These were beings who, just months earlier, wouldn't have bothered to look at a human twice. Commander Lin sat across from the Zephyrian ambassador, the same one who had once patted her on the head at a diplomatic function. His translucent tentacles now trembled with fear rather than wiggling with superiority. "We request assistance," the ambassador said, the translation device struggling to convey how difficult these words were for him. "Our homeworld defense grid will fail within days." Lin didn't smile or show any satisfaction at this reversal. The stakes were too high for pettiness. "Show me your system's layout," she said simply. Soon more came. The crystalline Mokhtar, who had always insisted humans were too violent to trust. The gas-filled Creel, who had laughed at human biology as inefficient. Even the seven-eyed High Counselor himself arrived, his once magnificent robes tattered from his escape. "How?" he asked Lin bluntly during their first meeting. "How are you defeating vessels that destroyed our strongest fleets?" Lin gestured to the human officers, working around them in the underground bunker. None of the fancy holographic displays the Council had used. Just practical screens, paper maps, and people talking face to face. "We never stopped being warriors," she explained. "While the Council races evolved beyond conflict, humans had to work to overcome our violent tendencies. We didn't eliminate our capacity for war. We channeled it, studied it, and kept those skills alive even while hoping we'd never need them." The base buzzed with activity as more alien refugees arrived daily. Many brought valuable intelligence about Nexoid movements. Some brought ships and weapons that had survived the initial onslaught. All brought a new respect for the humans they had once mocked. On the third day, Lin received a secure transmission from General Patel. "The joint fleet is ready," he reported. 600 human vessels, plus about 200 allied ships that escaped the initial attacks. "How are our new friends adapting to human battle tactics?" Lin glanced across the war room, where alien officers were learning from human instructors. A Mokhtar crystal being was practicing erratic evasive patterns with a flight simulator, its crystalline form flashing with frustration. "They're struggling," she admitted. "They've spent millennia thinking of battle as an equation to solve perfectly. We're teaching them that sometimes the best move is the one your enemy would never expect because it seems irrational." "And they're listening to us now?" The general's skepticism was clear even through the static of the transmission. "Desperation makes for attentive students," Lin replied. That night, she led her first joint species briefing. The room contained beings from 27 formerly Council worlds, some species that had been bitter enemies before the Nexoid threat. All now looked to this human, a member of the species they'd considered barely more than clever animals, for leadership. "The Nexoids fight with perfect logic," Lin told them, pointing to the battle simulations. "Every move calculated, every attack precisely measured, and that's their weakness." She switched the display to show recordings of successful human counterattacks. "We've analyzed their response patterns. They cannot process true surprise. When faced with tactics their computers classify as irrational, they hesitate. That hesitation might only last seconds, but in battle, seconds are all we need." A Creel diplomat's gas bubble rippled with confusion. "You want us to fight irrationally?" "Want you to fight like you have nothing to lose," Lin corrected. "Because you don't, none of us do." The next day, the first truly joint human-alien fleet launched from the new Arcturus base. The alien ships had been hastily repainted with Earth colors, alongside their own insignia, a visible symbol of their new alliance. As Lin watched from the command center, she saw the alien vessels attempting the unpredictable maneuvers humans had taught them. Some succeeded, others struggled. But together with the human ships, they formed something the Nexoids had never encountered, a battle group whose movements couldn't be reduced to mathematical formulas. The Council spent thousands of years trying to perfect civilization, Lin said quietly to her second-in-command. They forgot that perfection is predictable, and in war being predictable means being defeated. For the first time since the invasion began, the Nexoid advance wasn't just slowed, it was pushed back. The final gambit. The war room fell silent when the scout ships brought back the news. The Nexoids had stopped their scattered attacks and gathered their forces. Thousands of ships, more than anyone had realized they possessed, formed a massive armada heading straight for Earth. "They're done playing around," General Patel said, his voice heavy. "They're coming to finish us." The alien representatives from the former Council worlds stared at the holographic display showing the approaching threat. Fear rippled through the room in various alien expressions. Color changes, trembling appendages, scent releases. "We must evacuate," declared the Mokhtar ambassador, her crystalline form pulsing with alarm colors. "Abandon the Sol system. Perhaps find refuge in the uncharted regions beyond the galactic rim." Other aliens quickly agreed. The numbers were simply too overwhelming. Even with the recent victories, facing this armada directly meant extinction. "General," Patel let them talk. When the room finally quieted, he looked to Commander Lin, who nodded slightly. "We're not retreating," the general said calmly. "Impossible," gasped the High Counselor. "Their fleet outnumbers our combined forces 7-1. "Which is why we're not going to fight them ship to ship," Patel replied. He tapped a control, and the hologram changed to show something that made even the human officers murmur in surprise. "This is the Nexoid command structure," he explained. "Our intelligence teams have been piecing it together from every encounter, every intercepted communication." The display showed a pyramid-like hierarchy, with clear lines of authority flowing from the top down. "The Nexoids aren't just hierarchical," continued Lin, stepping forward. "They're pathologically dependent on central command. Unlike Council forces that had some autonomy, or humans who can operate independently, Nexoid ships literally cannot function without constant direction from their superior officers." She highlighted portions of the hierarchy. "Cut off these command nodes, and the ships below them become directionless. They don't adapt. They don't improvise. They simply wait for new orders that never come." "But how do we reach their command ships?" asked a Zephyrian captain. "They'll be in the center of their formation, protected by thousands of vessels." General Patel smiled for the first time that day. "We don't go through their fleet. We go around it." The plan was audacious, insane by Council standards. While a small joint fleet would engage the Nexoid armada directly, appearing to be the main resistance force, 3 specialized strike teams would make seemingly suicidal jumps through unexplored space, bypassing the enemy fleet entirely. "These jumps have never been attempted," warned the alien navigation expert. "The calculations alone would take weeks to—" "We've already done them," interrupted a human scientist. "We've been mapping these routes in secret for years." The room erupted again. Aliens shocked that humans had been exploring jump points the Council had declared too dangerous to chart. "This is why the Council never truly understood humans," Lin told them. "You see unnecessary risk. We see necessary preparation." The strike teams would target not the Nexoid weapons or shields, but their communication systems and command structures. Psychological warfare on a scale never attempted in galactic history. "The Nexoids can't comprehend certain human concepts," Patel explained to the strike team leaders later that day. "Their language doesn't even have words for chaos, rebellion, or individual action. Their minds literally cannot process the idea of lower ranks acting without orders." Lieutenant Khatri, now promoted to captain after her earlier victories, would lead the most critical strike team. Her mission: to broadcast specifically designed messages directly into the Nexoid command network. "These aren't just random signals," explained the human psychologist who had helped design them. "They're carefully crafted to create maximum confusion in their rigid mental structure. Contradictory orders, impossible commands, authority signals from non-existent superiors." As the joint fleet prepared for what might be its final battle, the mood was tense but determined. Humans worked alongside aliens who had once looked down on them, teaching them tactics that broke every rule of civilized warfare the Council had followed for millennia. "We're not just fighting for Earth now," Patel told his officers. "We're fighting for every free species in the galaxy." On the eve of the battle, Lin found the High Counselor staring at Earth through a viewport. The blue planet glowed peacefully, unaware of the danger approaching. "You know," the alien said quietly, We thought we'd evolved beyond you. Beyond the need for warriors and unpredictability. Lynn stood beside him, watching her homeworld. Evolution isn't always about becoming more peaceful, she replied. Sometimes it's about remembering what kept your ancestors alive when the universe tried to kill them. The counselor's 7 eyes blinked in what Lynn had learned was thoughtful agreement. Tomorrow, he said, we fight like humans. The new Guardians, the last Nexoid command ship, exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the darkness of space. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The battle that had raged for weeks was suddenly, unexpectedly over. Did we win? Asked a young communications officer on the bridge of Earth's flagship. Commander Lynn, now Admiral Lynn after a battlefield promotion, watched as the remaining Nexoid vessels drifted aimlessly, their lights flickering and weapons going dark. Without their command structure, they had become empty shells, unable to fight or even navigate properly. Yes, she said quietly. We won. The plan had worked better than anyone dared hope. While the main fleet engaged the Nexoid armada in what looked like a desperate last stand, the 3 strike teams had slipped behind enemy lines through unmapped jump points. Captain Cartry's team had successfully infiltrated the Nexoid communication network, broadcasting the carefully designed psychological warfare package directly into their command structure. What followed was beyond their wildest expectations. The rigid hierarchical Nexoid mind simply couldn't process the contradictory commands. Some ships had turned on each other, others had shut down completely. Their perfect formation had dissolved into chaos within hours. The news spread quickly across the galaxy. On countless worlds, beings who had hidden in fear now emerged to celebrate. The invincible enemy had been defeated by the most unlikely of saviors, humans, the species everyone had dismissed as primitive. 3 months later, representatives from over 500 worlds gathered on Earth for the formation of the new Galactic Alliance. The Grand Meeting Hall in New Geneva bore little resemblance to the old council chambers with their ostentatious displays of advanced technology. This room was practical, designed for actual conversation rather than spectacle. Admiral Lynn stood at the center of the assembly, still uncomfortable with her new status. Beside her, General Patel watched with quiet pride as the beings who once mocked humanity now looked to Earth for leadership. We did not defeat the Nexoids because our weapons were stronger or our ships faster, Lynn told the gathered representatives. We won because we remembered what you had forgotten, that sometimes survival depends not on perfection, but on adaptation. Not on following rules, but on breaking them when necessary. The new Alliance Charter was nothing like the old Council's governing documents. Where the Council had been built on technological superiority and philosophical purity, the Alliance embraced diversity of thought and approach. And most importantly, at the insistence of the former Council races themselves, humans would lead. The Unified Defense Forces. We were wrong about you, the High Counselor admitted publicly during the signing ceremony. We saw your emotions as weakness, your unpredictability as primitiveness. We failed to understand that these were actually your greatest strengths. In the years that followed, Earth became the center of a new kind of galactic civilization. The former Council worlds still led in science, art, and culture, but they now recognized the value of human perspectives. On what had once been a military training ground outside London, Admiral Lynn established the Galactic Defense Academy. There, beings from across the stars came to learn not just human battle tactics, but the unique blend of discipline and creativity that defined humanity at its best. We don't teach them to be violent, Lynn explained to the first graduating class, a diverse group that included former Council races alongside species previously deemed too primitive to join galactic society. We teach them to be ready, to understand that peace must sometimes be defended, that comfort can make you vulnerable. Most surprising to many was the popularity of human history and philosophy among the alien students. They studied everything, from ancient Earth wars to peaceful resistance movements, from Shakespeare to Sun Tzu. Your species contains such contradictions, a Mokthar student told her human instructor after a class on Earth literature. You create beautiful art about peace while preparing for war. You celebrate individuals yet form communities. You are capable of terrible violence and extraordinary compassion, sometimes in the same moment. That's what it means to be human, the instructor replied with a smile. 5 years after the war ended, Admiral Lin stood at the observation deck of the new Alliance headquarters, watching ships from hundreds of worlds coming and going in Earth orbit. Among them were the distinctive shapes of the new joint-designed defense vessels, combining the best of all member worlds' technology with the unpredictable flair that had become humanity's signature. "They used to laugh at us," said General Patel, joining her at the window. "Now they travel across the galaxy to learn from us." Lin nodded. "The funny thing is we're learning from them too. Their science, their art, their different ways of seeing the universe. Maybe that's the real victory." Below them, Earth glowed blue and green in the sunlight, no longer an isolated world at the edge of the galaxy, but the heart of something new, a civilization that valued both progress and resilience, both peace and the strength to defend it. The galaxy's former Laughingstock had become its guardian, and somewhere in the vast darkness beyond, other threats might be waiting. But this time, the galaxy would be ready.